Hey, assalamu alaikum, Gunjur online viewers. Gunjur online mo min kenji be jan wati wadi tanen wotanen bi fana natan buruna ko denge. Bi mbijante we have a guest today, a special guest. Ika for me ko Mr. Solomon Demba. Mr. Solomon Demba is a barrister, a legal practitioner based in the UK. So today we'll be discussing some of these state land issues, most generally the land issues in Gambia, but specifically in state land act in Kombo. Because even though we're not lawyers, it's our understanding that it might, it's probably is not correct. We're very, very convinced about that. But it's important for most of me and lawyer international lawyer so without any further ado, Mr. Solomon Demba, welcome. Thank you so much to be here online. The floor is yours. If you can introduce yourself, please.
Hey, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Mr. Solomon Demba, but as he rightly called me, Solo Demba. Of course, I hail from the Nyumi, but today I'm here with the Kombo people. And of course, I grew up in Kombo. I mean, of course, my professional background, qualified as a barrister, but also a medic by profession as well. And then I'm here today to contribute my part in the ongoing debate to really get to the issues that are affecting ordinary people's life in the Gambia. I think this is an important moment for everyone. Thanks for having me here, people of Gunjuru, Brufut, Sukuta, Mandinarin, Lamen, all over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, the next guest obviously is Dr. Conte. Dr. Conte is he's just like me. We are here every day, so he doesn't need any introduction, but he's gonna do his formal introduction half an hour. Dr. Conte Butuo. Introduce.
Yakumala fojande Mr. Demba yala nganyung mo foko Kombonkas nyobin kolo. Need the amount of fantumando about we cannot differentiate amongst us. Ndefawanying Bamala Carola, a farmer, a grandfather, bora nyomele. So na grandmother fanana mol fanana bora nyomele, dafakunda berende. So I commend ko, it is important, that Nembe Gambia kumo fola. Sakono control Kombonkolo mbemim kumbo kan wala na kena kote. Omu kule de komi ya lonko sisi ngaje karibirin dolomo denne wata ngaje lako na kebale ngani mindi molla ye lal dile ye mako e kado kombemu cleanati barbi mazakunda na si ye molla kenol table iko mazakunda bina development ola kela ne yenana to ni tonda kodanki o kenol ko wala wafu molia Nyena to 2021 budget obe min kachakan sign thing. Minister ya foko ebe kodo min sotola water pour ka kenolo waf abeta $2 billion. Sa kamenda ko fuaro la keno e wala table mazakunda ko ebe fenkela pare ka tona ram pour ka okay. So ndernga jelen beden dolo mo dende de bakaw. Kenol be daming kan defa wata farolo konole katado ko la jentara kunkol to takarado ko la je parabinera bako kenamantaraje and the same thing all the way to Brufut kole minke de wato wadi nara jang telano kamen foko Brufut ye minke nin Kombonkol be woke ko ye function kenol so de kafa strasa feel mi alon ko asa Brufut ko ma ko soma no okiskizo kele ka bonyen ka fa ko ala satel to Fatole Kenya si fasto Miyalonko is the same thing as Brufut Koli Asoto. So Untolman Najam Purka Mansakunda Kajafin Nata Mena Warangiko Soma Ringa Soma Jibe. Kadoniti Elekeno Wafu, Kadene model Diamdo Kunung, Ako 90 by 90, Mbarankunda model Waf Kanje Pira, it costs $600,000. Amari Farankonyo Kwa $10 sort of Ladoto, Kafuta. 250 but one side, another side 350. Ala width ni 175. So mte mafo ko mol kanela kenol waf. But fanande niye 250 meter waf mo ya waf moya. Itaman si ka soma jibe. Nin soma nata de ibe kala lunta on libata damente. so mala fi ngam nganna yende amo nga jamfande kato nga mol so jam mi alon ko barista Demba tala loyati Zabula fana kacha mi alon ko se ke famo samana mol tema ang mol ya understand ko na jang kadiamu tenelungo manna kula kafo ko ndole fi sada molde ndol nara jan kafo ko alien atolam bulol ci alien samba karam mo dal ko karang so nabo nyama ngo londo soron kunkon ngambran dol far nyanda tala nyanda nala le ngasi nale kaja kafo ko ndol la miroto ngambra ko nyanda kala wala nyama so that nga stop jam Mr. Mane. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. You know, I think you highlighted a very important point, which is actually something that, you know, we all need to bear in mind. Because as Gambians, I think it's important that we stand for what is right, but also ensuring that poor people are protected. Because a responsibility of a state, you know, any government is to ensure you provide security, protection of the property of your citizens and all the people within the state. The land issue is a precious issue in the Gambia. Land is precious because while land is precious, land is connected with socio-economic, cultural development of the people. The point of rule of law on land issue is a very important consideration because that's why a nation state, like many countries in the world, if they say, well, we are living in a rule of law, you have to question that. How you question that? You have to look at the fundamental requirements of rule of law. I mean, you look at the philosophers such as Albert Darcy and Joseph Rao, they all define what is rule of law, although there is no precise definition of rule of law. But the three important elements of rule of law are, firstly, that the supremacy of the law. There should be no use of arbitrary power by anyone against any individual. Equality before law. Equality before means access to the court, but also importantly, you know, making sure that people are treated fairly. Because without fairness, there can be no justice. And the other aspect, which is very important and well connected to this, is the protection of fundamental human rights. Because the International Committee of Juries in 1959 actually gave us a very good definition about what is the state meant to do, what is the government meant to do, is supposed to do. That includes protecting, treating you as with dignity. What does dignity involve? It involves protecting civil and political rights of citizens, but also it means that the state must take positive steps to lay the foundation on which human beings can socially, economically, culturally develop. That is why land issue is a fundamental human right issue. So a state that really failed to protect that, the state, it will be foolish to claim that the state is operating or living in rule of law. It's not credible claim. So rule of law means that, you know, the state has to make sure you protect the basic right of your citizens. You may want to say something to that, Mr. Mane.
Yes, Abaraka Baki, Solomon, Abaraka Baki. For people who don't know, Solomon Marinamati, you know, Alan and Badia, Bakabadia, so Marinam. Anyway, it's nice to have him here. So uncle is important in Yinkacha because even the Sukono call from sometime Mabring I understand. Ning idea Mialoko Banco ni Kafo Masaltam Banco, the Masatante Banco de Gambia. In Banco in Talama, the Jani Buffalo Banco for Gambia, Janada exists. So you have Nyomi, you have Kombo, you have Jara, you have all these places before there was Gambia. So when the British came, they got the place, the only place they got, and they bought it. It's what you can call Kombo St. Mary's and Banjul originally anyway. We're not gonna go into too much history here, but I importantly, basically, Marco Purmola understand ko. Masakuna Mielonko. As a Gambia Blabe, Banco, ye area BGB, area Doji, ko area, for example, Nico Dulalama, area Tanabili, or area Tanko, area Clinta. When the time meant in the history, in the land me uncle, Mamma Mumul, went back 10 generations, 200 years, 300 years. You call a cattle Masakuntola Gambia built Tamot. But you model mean but lado to all tight, all Talamo. So after I will explain the more how how basic, even basic common decency, human decency, why that would be very, very problematic. And as
in fact, you touch on very important aspect of rule of law. We said equality before law. So that means the prohibition of discrimination against particular individuals. I mean, if you look at the State Land Act 2000 and the State Land Act, which actually is being used now. I mean, I think what the Land Act, the Act did is to somehow imperil or destroy, the ownership of land by custom and traditions. If you look at it historically, you will always take a view that actually, in fact, before the British came to the Gambia, customary traditions, values are the ways in which land were being allocated. So that should really be the spirit of all this debate, because that's what makes human beings, our values. So we should have protected that. In terms of, in regards to how the law work around that, you look at, say, what, many people know, just said, the land that you obtain by custom. Because the State Land Act, what it did is to actually give the state absolute power to take all the lands from people. So that actually is contradictory to the fundamental principle of law, because that is actually, to some respect, discriminatory. Because if particularly we select a particular area of the region, is because we need to put this into context. Say, for example, we know in Kombos, in Bakau, what are these kind of people? Under international law, what are these kind of people? Although, when you look at the concept of what many people refer as indigenous people, could Bakau people or could Kombo people be classified as them? There might be two answers. One answer may be no, because they are from a dominant tribe. But there's another answer which is actually compelling, which was a sort of a helpful guidance developed by African Charter on Human Rights, their working group that were working on sort of the right of the indigenous people. They have come with certain characteristics to say that is people who really survival are dependent on their right to access to their land in a particular way. They could fall on that category. So that means that at international level, in fact, there is protection for people of Kombo, because the fact is that the land is their way of life, and their relationship with the land is to maintain their survival. So the access to that right should not be actually imperiled by any legislation.
Yes, Barack Baket, Dr. Conte, what do you want to add there?
Yeah, Baraka, Barrister Demba. Beriba di amukan ngintara online ngana o document yung open kajoko manzakunda sembo minta kata mola dulara mola kenol table ndolla Kombo Faraba, a university means Samananje, 80 hectares, Yolta, almost 1/3 of a mile. Coming mile on Iba Tamala, near Kuntu Sinyasaba. University of the Gambia Walta, Ntola Molu Bulu. But Hanika more compensate, more compensate, Fenfen Hanbury. Maybe eminent domain use la pour ka foko not a bit development kala blad no commence ak ñemu institutional place leti pour que mole na kara ware mazakunda la defenne kala je per mi fanan tamu wodulato mazakunda mayna wo sembo tala ko keno tawolu bulu han bure madi wala kar foire ko foire o betara foire yala kono so lafte yemma ko wolto katu ninga nyin ko be jibe jang Masakunda esembo minta ye kenol minta kabo nabota faraba banda UTG ye SALAGI lata ala tentu bere kama kaba fita nema su coastal road layout Brufut Heights Canifing industrial institutional layout itara bijulo for jaban nombang for features layout for monitoring industrial layout, for Brikama industrial layout, for Bijulo industrial layout, for all Joswang Lafenjoning. Anima Zakunda na de Quibela Sembo Tala Purko Fengolta Modu Bulu. Molmini Yalonko ila Kabural Tamo Kenolti. Ndagabra Mazakunda Yante will compensate.
Well, in fact, Doctor, you touched on very important. That is very right. I mean, if you look at the Declaration on the right of the indigenous people, one of the provision you particularly look at provision Article 8 of that provision categorically stated very clearly that the state must provide effective mechanism for people who have been forcefully disposed of their land. But also, if you look at Article 10 of that provision, it's very categorical and said that, if people were forcefully removed from their land, what it requires, there has to be what you call as a fair compensation, just and fair compensation. What just and fair compensation would involve, it involved, one, you have to engage the people who are involved in that process. I mean, of course, land sometimes can be used for public interest. That's one thing, but this is important that a due process, a transparent process is followed. What a person has, you cannot just take that away from him or her like that. In fact, that would also be in contravention with the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Article 14 will capture that. So your question of fair compensation is important. But what it means is that, also land is compensated at a market value. It's not that, you buy a bag of rice or a bottle of, not a champagne, but a bottle of, duty or something to compensate them for that. It has to be something that is materially viable. But also, it is important that those people who are involved in that process, they are given their informed consent, because that is crucial. The principle of informed consent means that people are given the right information, they are provided the right information, they are helped to make a decision, without any hidden agendas. And if you are using a land for public purpose, that has to be spelled out. There has to be some level of negotiation. And in fact, that, Doctor, you have in a land, you have different estates in a land. What I mean by that, different interests. You can have a leaseholder you can have a freeholder. So in fact, you could create that kind of situation where, the people, actually the leaseholder, would always go back to the freeholder to pay something. I mean, or you can set like a trust fund. I mean, I was fortunate to visit Ghana, and I saw the dam that was built by Kwame Nkrumah, which is quite, the people of Volta State, Volta region, they have a trust fund set for them because the dam was developed. As a result of that development, they were displaced of the land, but the government took efforts to ensure that support continue. So these are things. Fair compensation is a fundamental tenet of such proceeding. But as I said, it is important that if people feel that their rights are violated, there are always means to actually to get redress. Because I think, it is about time we really take things more seriously in Gambia. We use all means, whether legal means, making people aware of the issues is important. We should be discussing. We should not be begging for people to come to the table. We should request for them to come, and so that we can have a fruitful discussion about our rights. Thank you.
Yes, Baraka Baki, Uncle, Dr. Conte, Baraka Baki. Uncle, I want to, can you point emphasize? Because I really want to stress this really want to stress this. The more so can understand that the land is illegal under international law. I'm not a lawyer, but I went through the UN case laws on this land all over the world. You can see, so basically land and human rights annotated compilation of case law. You will see all over the place, from Belize to the Amazon, all over the place. What happened in people in Kombo, in Bruford, in Induma, and other places is exactly mirrors what happened there. So if it can be a judge that is actually breach international law, the fundamental right as a human being, if it breached it in, let's say, in Belize, how come, or in Kenya or in Tanzania, how come it doesn't breach it in the Gambia? It does. So what I love to stress, sorry, Uncle. Yeah, stress here very, 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 very well. We need to stress to them that this land belongs to us, and we need to go to court over it. Sorry, go.
Well, yeah. No, in fact, you are right. I mean, these are the sense of the court. But of course, sometimes you have to even push things beyond the courts if a national court is really sitting on their hands. Most of these land cases, what happened, we saw in the Gambia particularly, that actually people who wanted to do something about them, they become so much involved in the subject matter. As a result, they develop what you call as a vested interest. That impede their ability to do anything for ordinary people. They were more interested in their own interest than anything else. A land that belongs to you, you obtain that through a customary norms and tradition. It's a land that belongs to you. If it is not taken with due process, you may try to enact a law, a national law, but that national law itself could be in contradiction with already international law that you have. Because we have to understand that, if you look at what we call as International Covenant on Political and Civil Rights and International Covenants on Economic and Social Cultural Rights, these are binding legal obligations, create a binding legal obligation on states. So those are things that, they have to ensure, particularly, people's rights of property are protected and respected. And also, it is also important that, people are not prohibition of discrimination. Even without going further, if we go to our own national, we looked at our own constitution. There are things that are prohibited by the law. And those are based on international standards. So if a land is not taken properly, according with due process, of course, if there has been any illegality, then that would be in breach of the law and international, both national and international law. I mean, you have shown few examples In Kenya, that was the case. We saw, in Gambia's situation, we know what is the problem because Gambia, the population is expanding and the increased need of the land is increasing day by day. But the people that actually live around that area, this is also their way of living. They need to depend on those lands for their survival. So if they have sent it for monetary value, that monetary value itself needs to be adequate, needs to be just and fair. So if a due process is not, this is right that, a process is taken to address. The way you address your issues is by taking matters to the court. Because the court of law, whatever they are likely to look at things from more objective point. Of course, those all involve people to have the courage and the ability to say that we are going to follow whatever it takes to ensure that what we are entitled to. Because if you don't fight, we continue to live like that. This is what's going to continue to happen to our grandchildren, our children. We can't have that going forever like that.
Okay, about Uncle Dr. Conte, I think you heard, I'm marrying them lawyer to that anyway. So all until we can read these things, but they are always going to be the final points of the law, which is going to elude us because we are not trained lawyers. But some of them are, it's just such common sense that you can read them. But you need to be very careful not to become too confident that you know what you're talking about. So anytime if I read something, I'm like, this applies to our case here. Then you reference it to people who trained. So that could be important that we bring him here. We got other lawyers lined up also, inshallah. But anyway, I'm left for that anyway.
Yeah, la from na pro I press Demba e Marco na expropriation because in this document from that I obtained from lawyer Ben Suda, the law firm, he called so far you learn to let me along for the past 7 years. Sanji Warawala Commando. Masakunda can only minta by force. And then Najoko Brufut Heights Ning. Masakunda water by private ownership la water. So after your mark into la more understanding. Kafani Masakunda nata ko inara development olla. Allah can only ya talu bulu. But Masakunda turned again the private citizen where real estate development KJ. Until after a marco in until after Purukayan government sue. Until opportunity be Montole. Kadayente Jahaled in Abrufut Heights GBA. Masakunda 15.98 hectares, a whole tower bulu. But a B Jamala benefit water. For mane kundan kole benefit ta jebang for burfudun kole benefit ta jebang for tough Mustafa Njai for le benefit ta je ndu nataro nin tough benefit ta woto ndere wo sembo soto nyaade la pour que sous ka foy ko yen compensate lafte market water.
Okay, Uncle Marjani just not Dr. Konta Marco de Madi. Burfoot Heights are in tough, they are not yeah. And Burfoot Heights.
Well, this is very simple. I mean, thanks.
Hello?
So who owns Burfoot Heights?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but left to clarify. TAF and Burfoot Heights, they're not the same. But TAF is Burfoot Gardens and AU Villa. Burfoot Heights is completely different. Burfoot Heights is part of the side of the road goes towards the sea. And then the Burfoot Heights is TAF and AU Villa. That's the land towards Burfoot. So they are different. So the ones in where TAF builds, that is Mane and Sani clan. But where most of Burfoot Heights is actually Boyden clan. So they not.
So private Jamal time what you're saying? For government time old lad bang.
No.
Private citizen time old lad.
No. Basically, I'm just giving you the historical who owns where. Because he said Burfoot Heights Mane Kunda also. I said no, doesn't belong to Mane Kunda. That's all.
Okay, but in Kenya then come in now. Burfoot has bri Masakunda yin dulate ibulu.
Yeah, the lawyer is going to answer that for us.
Okay, good.
Okay. Well, let me just sorry to I mean, Doctor, thank you very much for highlighting that. I think the thing is that, the word force itself, that seems to me inappropriate, because you cannot take something by force, particularly a property belonging to someone else. So I think, that would be sort of not appropriating on the part of the state. Right. If the state said, well, we're going to use this process or this particular facility for public benefit or for public interest, it has to be that. You cannot convert that into private entity because that itself, that means that there's something that has come there that's almost not proper. So that is a cause of concern. How do you address such problem? Of course, then you will have to look at how many people that you'll have to bring to court. And you have to look at the parties. You have to obviously look at the strength of your case, building evidence, taking witness statement, establish your ownership of that. And of course, you can look at various courts. I mean, one of the one that's quite close to Gambia is the ECOWAS court. And I think that court did actually says there's something that I came across on its website to say that you do not need to exhaust national remedy.
Yeah.
You can straight go to the court and claim your rights if you think that your right has been violated, either by the action of the state or by the state acting with someone else. Because it's the state of the Gambia you would have to have quarrel with first. But of course, it means that there will be parties who would also form party of that. But period, you cannot take public someone property and with the pretense that you're using it for public purpose, and then you give it for private thing. That is outrageous.
Yes, Barakabaka, Uncle, Barakabaka, Dr. Conte. Now, for me, we keep on repeating this governmental loyalty, but some of them is like they are so blatantly obvious, Yeah, for me, yeah, we can bypass the Gambia. I mean, a lot of Gambians already are actually going to ECOWAS for a whole host of things anyway. But I just want to emphasize, I'm going to stress on this a lot because no more Yantani understand look, they have nothing to lose. They are on the right side. That in the Bankoni table is not being taken correctly. They have to fight for this land to get this land back. It's very, very important. So, Intewola number emphasize can back it be as a lawyer, you help us on that. I also know sometimes like I can take the example of you can say tough development. If you speak to even people, blah blah. Hold on a minute. There's something very fundamental you need to understand. Stolen property is stolen property. Doesn't matter who the thief is. Doesn't matter how powerful the thief is. Doesn't matter how connected the thief is. It's stolen property. It belongs to the owner. If we build a story building there, has high as to the sky, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's called squatting. Yeah, if you sold this land of somebody else they build there, that's their loss, not your loss. This is your property. So I think that's when I organize the fundamental law. Stress na mole back you understand because people talk to the but I that's not my problem. You took my ancestral land. I want my ancestral land back. This is basic fundamental law. So me is a Sanji will kill them sunya bitante. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, in fact, the points that you just sort of touched on, which is quite an important consideration when you look at all this issue. Of my conversation, an interest in or estate in the land can vary from one point to another. You know that you could start from a license to a lease to a freeholder, and the real owner of the land. So in this case, it would be you people are, from my understanding, is that claiming the real owner of the land. So whatever the compensation needs to take, the compensation would take into account the interests of other people, whether actually that could be compensated along. But importantly, because the fact that the remedy for you would be something that the court would have to consider. And that means that you have the right to that remedy. If the court come to a view and say, in fact, really, your land was taken illegally and was given to someone else. So then there would be a time that parties to the proceeding would have to come to their sense and say, you know what, there is a way out of this. Because there could be ways out, as probably that the court always want parties that are involved in disputes to really find solution to their issues, before it gets out of hand. Because one of the the court proceeding, one of the things it gives back publicity. So in fact, sometimes this might be a consideration for parties that are involved in this, because in any sense, although we don't know the full fact of this case, but if you say to anyone that, I have taken a land from someone for public use, then after I sold that land to someone else, well, there's something that is fishy there. So that needs to be really, pulled on, and I think, you have the right to actually bring your case, to have your day in court if you want to make so. But of course, you need to make sure you have the credible evidence to support your case, and that means that you have people behind it, because as you know, a legal battle, there are things that sometimes can last for many years, But of course, also when a legal battle starts, at times, party comes to their sense and say, you know what I've done, it was quite wrong. I better start negotiating with these people and look at way in which I can compensate them. So yes, that's your right. It will be a matter for you to follow.
Yeah, Dr. Conner, let me just jump on quickly, Uncle. I know because of I have a personal connection here, but actually want to talk in general terms. Unfortunately, in our situation, I can never move myself out of the equation. Historical injustice being BJ. But I just wanted to talk in general terms anyway, that in general terms, based on principles of even morality, but again, you can question what is morality. It's a philosophical question anyway. But when it comes to this, somebody stolen property, it's a stolen property. War is very fundamental. You can go, lawyer can do their legalist charts and stuff, but there's something which is just fundamental, it's just basic. You can move away from that. So it doesn't matter who the thief is, it doesn't matter who bought the stolen property, but the fact remains that it is. So sometimes I wish I could be unconnected to the whole thing. I can be detached from it, because sometimes you feel like it kind of cloud your judgment a little bit, even though you try to be so rational and logical. But you got an emotional attachment here.
I know. I mean, I think that is always the case, and this is why sometimes a bit of objectivity has to always take its course. And you are right. Those third party, there might be people who are innocent third party who are being caught by the system. But the key focus here really, it is not to worry about those people for now. Yeah. It is to worry about your property that has been taken away from you. Exactly. And then because the system would always ensure that anyone who has a stake in it, their right is also protected. That's right. So someone has to be the loser. And at the moment, we cannot say who is that going to be. But certainly, you have a right to assert that right properly in a court of law. And that has to be based on credible evidence that you have, And I think, from what you've explained, from those facts, it appears to me something unusual had happened in those circumstances. Because, I mean, how could you say that, I'm taking a land for private development, for public purpose, but then later on it's sold for private? So that is something that needs a proper investigation, And as I said, some of these cases, they turn out on the facts, what comes by, what documents are created, and so forth. But yes, indeed, so, by all means, you must assert your right, and you must do that. And also, it's important that you collect the evidence now and sort of start talking and sort of start writing, because it's important that you engage those people that you think are the people who have done something that was wrong.
Dr. Conte, sorry, I jump on there.
I want you to emphasize on because the problem we have in Kombo and elsewhere in the Gambia, because I also always say that the land issue that we have in the Kombo, or the land conflicts that we have in Kombo, will find their way also in other parts of the Gambia. But in Tegami Jiben Telamiroto, wala nyenti isa foy ko itonon safe for the safe for let's safe bank or water safe bank dolt. Itolong alkaloti. So ni o sembo fanan detail kata fe mantara alkaliya to kodanke, kata fe mantara safe ya to kodanke. So ni eke safe for the nimol na de be kumboka iko. Masakunda natala yena kenol tambulu, ike ba kala for government use. But in our turn around yadi private citizens la. Ndinga abran dol fa mola awareness fa wala man taraje. Because the little men nga over hanibi de fon ya kata ikebe alla sate de mo nyine ngaje ko. Fato la sate kenol bi jelban kenol mi yalan ko alsa use ko public use. Kar Gambia and Tolbika say kamira soma la kafako. Gambia la population of Benjamin sanji one command no. Sanji tansaba command no, sanji tan nan command no. And in be population of Benjamin man killing. So nimmo population will increase ta. Ihani kafako ika mola sare moro ini modo sare nimmo fada ya sare ala noto. How about if the person also wants content lafta mbado ngam fata ala couple of fonsaje fast taraje for generations to come. So war is going to be in conflict. So ndenga ko sa kombo sate jama Gambia sa telephone jama kono anu buru furfa. Isa ko sa telephone kono ila bade call their space is depleted. So ndola morfon because the ke mira o kola ka foko so man be yinkela nyaadi le pour se kenolta pour se mo bade dame. Cause if your population was 2,000 people, as a possible that within 10 years it might swell to 10,000. But if I don't na molu mini alon ko be Gambia, kadene ne moja maka diamu, hande fa badin do lo mi alon ka be kena wa fola. So biringa moy nga kibaro kia kanka ko akadlami wafu fasa wafu yaba billa hanbi amandanku. Ndenga mingi be wolo nyende ko nde mafu mo kana kena wafu de. But ni badu ngo bota daming ye molo abota daming itebe keno wafla awafa Maria kada soma ni sura ta wokeno la te balala. So sometimes the government blame for government is doing this that and that but to fa la mol daga tinyaro ke iba inimi fa wuluta albe bada korda killing albe bada kabila killing wala kana si ye keno wafi sa fa tollon kebalti e tolla kawla nyanda tamala. So mara I didn't understand baba kele. So that is the biggest problem na misoro Kombo.
Well,
I think anywhere ilan conflicts or niya jibe bilda mil kos kambando ya fonte ko nka ko anitoro wartale. Akoy can you believe ntolla korda faun ye wala waf aka afama bantale. So afama do mal akoy ko general be nyen korda wafula na al sura do kodola an san kumandali ya fonye na kodo diala general bita wafula moya. So these are the problems. So nse sinya wanya Mr. Mane nse sinya wanya barista Demba nsa foy ko some of these things ndol fon ka initiate fon la mono nyimu jawyalti.
Well, in fact, I mean, Doctor, not to cut you, but yeah, men for fun is very important, in terms of the customary ownership of the land. I think still I always take a view that the state has a undoubtedly indisputable responsibility to ensure that this area part of the land is regulated properly. In fact, I think that actually it needs to be codified. What I mean by that, we need to set out clearly, because there seems to be a lot of confusion around this. And sometimes, I think that tends to lead to a lot of problems. The example that you just cited, someone selling someone own, that home, and we know this is a major problem in the Gambia. But I think still it is important the state of the Gambia take that responsibility seriously and codify these things so that one, there will be consistency, but also because if not, what you see you go to different cultures, you would see that the issue of land is dealt differently. So that itself would create a lot of instability and conflict.
Okay.
I think it's important that that part of the legislation is, those reforms are brought in to really tackle, because as I said, the function of the state, it is to want to maintain the security of the citizens, but also to preserve their fundamental human rights, which land is part of that. If the state failed to do that, then what is the point of the state? You'll ask that question.
Okay. Hey, Abaraka Bakim, Uncle, Dr. Kontofana Abaraka. When it comes to Kombo Banku Diamo, I am very careful because we have two issues here. But let's not conflate them, because the moment you conflate them, it creates a lot of confusion. Dr. Conte example of me volum ko mol fon ka le banko wafu nyo ko wante mol fon ke le banko wafu. Bon tol me concentrate kamila masa kunda ka ko bonko le banko ta ka for state le tamari. They're two different things. So all I know, sometimes when I have this discourse and I tell people I just want to concentrate on one bit, Olomco, the State Land Act is illegal. For us, it's actually breach our human right. But people selling land between them, that's a whole different topic. Whoa, we can discuss it another day. Where it comes to sensitization, it comes to our people understanding that the what's it called, the price of land rises exponentially. So whatever, if you sell your land today for $10, you know that in 20 years time will be $1,000 or vice versa. But it's very, very important. It's very, very important because Gambia, that's what they do. Anytime Kombo complain about, if only Kele Banco work, we know that. We know how people sell their land, but we're not complaining about that. Body book, kachal. But Masakuna kana Banco Busina by Foscadi Modola. That's what we talk about. So the two
in fact, you are right. There are two separate issues, but in fact, also it is the fact that the ball still remains with the states, the governments, to actually ensure that such things are well regulated. Because even within family, the notion of martial law is kind of not something that serves Gambia interest so much. We need to look at things more seriously. If people are doing things that are wrong, they need to be dealt with. And then so that protects other people's rights. We cannot leave it to the issue of Badia. But the other fact is that, I think the key thing is that, the State Act, which is actually the one that has been debated, and that is actually because it is the responsibility of the states to actually protect the individual land rights or property rights. If the state itself use legislative means to imperil that right, that is quite concerning. And I think this is the problem with that legislation, because what it does, it is to give, if you know what I mean, the customary ownership of land, maybe to give it like to throw it out, because it almost render it useless, in the sense that even the people, particularly in Kombos, this is in Kombos, if you own a land, in fact, there is a lease on that land for 99 years. So in effect, you are not actually the owner of your land. So, and the idea behind that, is because there's always a view that actually that area is more developed. But I think in order to really deal with some of this issue, is look at how you can decentralize, But, where people live, you have to ensure that the lands that are secure for their survival, socially, culturally, economically, are preserved and maintained. But if you yourself has taken those land unlawfully, or you use arbitrary power, because law is law, but law is only fair if it's a just law, right? So meaning that there has to be some element of, and this is why Albert Darcy was quite sort of persuasive, when he said that the use of arbitrary power is not in line with rule of law, because you can create a law, But what also begs the question, actually, sometimes I wonder what are the politicians doing, about all this issue, because one may take a view that all this legislative process went through the House of Representatives. But no one really raised anything about that, because everyone is of course, not focusing on the wider interest of the people. So it's yes.
Okay, so Baris Demba, left after when the land law was initiated in Parliament by then Minister of Lands, Local Government and Lands, Alhaji Yaya Sise. Ako Kombo Banko bi Masakunda Banko. Na député jelle bi je mbe tol fala Mbemba Jata, Dembo Jata, and in Sar of Lamen. Lamen Jaba of Kombo East. Wala lota ko not in Kombo East. Ya si chela miro mente ko Kombo keno be kabo katon katafo kafuta tumbo. O kono be masakunda kenolte. Lamen Jaba ndama lota ko atakela Kombo East. But all the people sabolo mbije wole man diamu. So ni to man diamu kafoko atakela ndolfana ya. How do we expect more many along mu deputy other places would be a support land?
Well,
so
that is,
yeah, so that was go ahead.
No, I was just saying that is actually it shows lack of maybe paying attention to their duties, because really, I mean, it may also be argued that even those people who are not, representing the area, has an obligation to contest those kind of laws that would have created so much, or that is creating so much problem for the people. Representation is not about just going to the House of Parliament and sitting there and maybe get paid by the end of the month or do the job of the master. It's about representing the view of the people, the collective view of the Gambians. Because in the end, if you take this case to, say, for example, ECOWAS course, and you are successful, who is going to compensate you?
The government.
Oh, wow. Okay. The government is everyone's government. So this is why, even though those people, who were there at the material time, could have said something, but they were busy focusing on other issues, and that's what we have. But more so, in fact, it's more relevant today, because I also think that actually a political process, politician needs to come clear on these issues, rather than sitting on the fence. They should be able to come out and clearly and support a position to say, you know what, we actually understand your positions. We are going to make sure we put a verifiable policy to say that these lands that were taken in this manner will be returned. Okay. But are they doing that?
Yeah, Dr. Konde. I think to us it might not be too big, it might be very small. But I think it actually is quite helpful, because at least we can see what we can do. I don't go politician will be a man for but at least don't like a political force, let them act. I mean, if we go by, I don't want to go by conjecture here, and history is always got narratives here and there, counter narratives and counterfactuals here. But even if we have to go by this narrative that Lamin Kitty Jabang Lotal he contested and I have no doubt to disagree, not to believe it. What he actually shows us is like the whole process is essentially not right. It's discriminatory. So if all of Gambia says, okay, we're gonna do this, but one person said no, we shouldn't do this, and they agreed, and his land was excluded, that's discrimination right there, even though he's a promoter like me. Fundamentally, we have to go take the state to court, because fundamentally they discriminated against our basic human rights. They contravene our charter. It's a charter of UN Convention. So I don't want to make it personal. I always want us to go against the state where the lawyers can come. He can tell us this and this and what he can do. But there's so many narratives, there's so many conjectures there. But one thing is for sure, which nobody can dispute. What is happened is discriminatory. What is happened is illegal, actually. You can even say it's illegal. Yeah, on the UN Convention. So all I think is important than that all the time. And what are politicians doing? Until we are going to be the people, maybe for sale. So we just want to help them to understand this is what is happening, how we can correct them. So politicians come to us, this is our problem. What can you do to fix it?
That's right.
So this is you might think that only 3 people here, 4 people, but the hope, and I hope Kombo, the man can watch this, because Kombo, it can come to another place. Yeah. So it's very important. That's my priority here. Even sometimes it becomes so difficult. I wish I can be detached. I wish I wasn't personally actually personally, how do you want to call it, being a victim of the land thing, because then maybe I could be less more detached. I can be much more detached. I can be less emotional. I can be much more logical and rational, because it doesn't matter how rational or logical you are. If you got an emotional connection to something, it can become very difficult. It can cloud your judgment. I do my utmost best not to, but I'm only human. Yeah. But I always want us to do this based on the fundamentals of the law. So, lawyer, you need to come and help. We need to hear from you more often, so that you can give them this courage and power. Communicate is wrong, and they can correct it.
Yeah, in fact, in this show, I mean, I think it is fair. I mean, I'm so humbled to be here today. But the thing about a passion about law is not the fact that they pay you where they pay you, but it's also about making sure that people receive justice that you think, because that's the passion that drives us. I mean, we have already settled in our professional careers. We could have just gone to, but the thing is that the main contention here is really, how do we get the process start going? One, we can use the political process, because nothing is given for free. A politician should not be coming to your house and say, well, you know what, I want you to vote for me, when they are not clear as to how they're going to scale your future. How can you vote for them? So these are some of the things, exerting political pressure. But, and that goes with the fact that, we need to redress some of these issues. Even if it's not immediately going to have any impact on you, but it's also look beyond what is happening now. Because in future, it will be important that our children, our grandchildren, would have to go through the same similar problem if we haven't taken any step to address some of these issues. So it's crucially important that we take those steps. And yes, Doctor, you want to
Nyende I mean for is true, because Barrister Demba I mean for is true, because nyin land is to nyin ning be land is to follow. Yamanga Kombo ku kacha damade. Honey, most of the administrative areas, particularly Jara Soma and Embassy, iko cannot be atale. The same issue that Dolamin face. Jara Soma call fanay wala fanam face. Basen call fanay wala fanam face. So aiming for to get lawyers to come and address the land issue, womukulu mianga kumayada. Kadune mol site ko ngana kachala. O kacha to mando bare fa ida fanya da katala ye lamo e kacha sifa memfo. Kan doloka somo le jibe mam be jibe. Mazakunda na I cannot molubulo kadbiri Banjul South la Ladolta ye convert ko the post authority or Lalta ye Samana Bakau Fenke Cape Point area ye compensate le. Barandola Mole can tambule can compensate. So nindol fana o kusi faji be nga foko manna kala nada ko mbemu Gambia dingol le tembe nyanda treat le the same way. Ndenga maro lua mu lua timi yalonga kumayata za molsa manam back. So this nyemu kole de komi yalon ko na mol fananse lamo na ka kumo mimfo wo mu kole de komi yalon ka kumaya ta baba kala fa soma kada ni si de yemira sanyu mo commento atola korala kono alla sate kono molo yimbi ya nembi bi ni aji be mor siada baba kalde yemira ka mazakunda kenol ta molo bulu kad at least burfudun ko ndeko for continuously or at least the people of Brufut, I'm very proud of them. At least to the final blast to la mi yalon ko safo ntalo nyente no Brufut ko fa nyanta ka mazakunda kana tapale yake promise baldi le ka foko allo last trust of feel after the madina tala je pour ngana fenke kana so wala bar fana ni dinda baka way baka on ko nyenen ka kenete bulu mi yalon ko sa no public use sukuta I think you have to ibe tamala how many miles kabo jame ota kata all the way to Jaba kado keno da mal so forest mbije so ne maza kunda na yin kusi fala ke fengol ta molo bule yin keten e settle be lolo dal to maza kunda ko we want estate because the Gambia Housing Authority yin Social Security and Housing Authority amu Gambia is part of the Gambia government. So ni wol nata e koy be kenol tala ke kana estate development because honorable Nyasi Naraja okwa kachale kasndela mi entene tora wala nyinde ko masa ko naka nyin kenol min ta molo bulu ala faranga singa mira ndoro mi bebe yindu la de abdi jambe de amola jam be tara kunkol tole ndara farol to ngado ko keje foi tara manola cika ya samane alla kodra kono bani ya jibe Gambia sa mimbe ken to la Kombo banko ni ya ko korosi ya kiskisi ya jibe ani toro warta bakale wala nyinde ko molo man dula so be do ko kala damin ajibe ban lisi ya GC famin boyta Gambia GC famin boyta Gambia natara molo natara kenolo be je molo be do ko kala je bon sa fa alhamdulillah rabbil alamin kat wala nyinde ko berin to mo no de molo ka manol so from one season to another Barabi sama banta la ibada ngol commande ya ko mano banda isa ko masibo ken so non kuto ko mi yalon ko nyanta fanangi bere so ndol fanana the small little place in Minnesota katu nyel yalon din government e ladol ta pour ka kudo ke mesemane la fa kudo fanan samanna woro nyin san mainente because Mazakunda ka o symbol ta kata mola dlato ike kata mola farol ka black sand bondi je so atola dlali ya stople bara akata sanya akata dla jamato non dol fana ngamera kon dol fana dlali bina jela de so yemin fo nyin to manke loyalty bari hanan karanta nyawonya momo le mecho bedami yo long so mi e mecho soto loya yala yenta mari bulala loya ay ko sate a foi keneke fo mol sa fahamu so yimo kacha de kacha mi yalon ko nata jan jusulata ko mo fele jam mi yalon ko ako asita kombongol al fele dale ako ala dindi yaka kombole so afela be na bi ay kuma la fo kuma mi yalon ko ase makoro samana du nyi makoro ninga ko kiskis nga findinde moliya fo moliyaje o fanan se modol fanan mako nyomi ase modol mako badibu ase modol mako salum law Gambia bi je kade Gambia la banku ko nyin ani toro wartal non to mi yalon ko sembe ne obembulu karobe kunkono ane loya fanan bi ja ndega mara fanan nyanta katala ne moli nga singa ko le kacha non para febra kombole febra law nyemu kula da ko mi yalon ka nga soma mira anin kana bi mira de ndo Mazakunda ka fo mansa ya botale ko itole feo fo nyanta tamara wala hani ale ko dilale ay miro dila pisi ko mire ko le ke faye so ne Mazakunda nata ke nyin ko in fact nyin tourism development fenjo yi yo kaito min samana ka fo mole ko se mole kenolta it's at 800 meters it's a hot half kabo barakana e ko use to fana Kombo East which is a damn lie. Ima o kaito for man sort of pursa ka findinde. So ndole bija man na jang ka fitna samana jan dara jang hana raye political party in support. Isa foka bar ndolo fana na lato. Kula bija mi yalon ko ay ni tora ndul lafta ko nyi ngasinga kacha. Kala ninga o ko kacha tumando bala so mobe mako wala tinna munu mo hamo so de miro sodo. Ifananse mo bula mari ale si ale kacha kanale kacha kule de komi alon kase as a cool time on the kendeke. So lawyer Demba ila na janga biya ingi sula baba kele kadi ko kuma le fo kuma mi alon ka kuma ya ta baba kele. No moja ma fana be Gambia kana la dula mazakunda ma wo sembo soto. Kana ila keno table a me compensate. Kaita fuaro nimfen table ila dulata. Ibita mun dole.
Yeah. No,
what the time I can Gambia sign? Go ahead.
Yes. In fact, yeah. In fact, thank you very much. I mean, you know,
Uncle, I think you got a thing on your phone. Your phone is also on.
Is it?
Yeah, try now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. So what I was just going to say, you know, one of the things that you say, which actually resonates with me seriously, is the fact that the issue of land actually is not only limited to Kombo, but it's all over the country. And also the issue of really standing for our rights is not only about land, but it's also about other issues, you know, right? We should not be seen as people who are pushovers by just giving up the notion of kinship. A government is elected to represent us. They are elected to represent our interests. We pay them out of our cover. We need to ensure that they are kept accountable. If you are against the government principle, doesn't mean that you are an enemy to the government. In fact, that sometimes by criticizing decision making, it makes the decision maker to think, you know, deeply before they can make any decision. So everyone, you know, it is your right, you know, and I think, you know, this issue, although you may see that, you know, well, it's only, we are talking about Kombo, but this is wider Gambian issue because the issue of land is everywhere in the Gambia, you know, and I believe, you know, what needs to happen is actually those reforms that were supposed to take place, particularly looking at the customary ownership of the land, to eliminate corruption from it, to ensure that, you know, to put in safeguards, such as, you know, so that a family member or, you know, maybe a less immoral family member will not get away with the family land. You make sure the system is clear and codified in a way that actually is applicable throughout the country. Because what that would do, it will prevent conflict. You know, we all know what conflict is capable of doing. It is capable of undoing the good work that we've done. So, you know, by taxing government to do their job, that is every citizen's job. You know, we should not allow or to be pushovers. We should start family in our beliefs, you know, and I think that, you know, this is why I believe family, these land issues need to be pursued properly in a proper manner. Of course, every case has to be established by evidence and fact, you know, and then you need to look at that, and how you formulate that is actually, I'm sure you're already doing that, talking to your people under the ground, making sure that your rights are preserved and protected. Because, I mean, if I look at the issue of, say, for example, in Bakau, you know, where I grew up, you know, sort of the woman who goes to the vegetable garden. Say, for example, if you take those land from those people, you know, and then you use it for, say, tourism, what kind of compensation? Because these are people who are not likely to secure blue-collar jobs. Are you going to put a trust fund in place? Because whatever the government lease, the land government lease, government is getting money for that. So why can that money not be used? Because by putting the customary ownership of land at the back door, what they have done successfully is to sort of wedge a divide between the poor and the rich, or the elites, because it will mean that the elites have the opportunity and they have the resources to buy land, whereas the poor gardener in maybe in Bakau may not be so lucky to have that. So it's important that we stand for these values. That's what's going to make Gambia successful.
Baring Baraka Bakia, Dr. Conte Baraka. Yeah, Dr. Conte, yeah, Banjulunko left example of all. Eko Kabri porting authority, porting extend the Jole. But it's only one female and Konkangina one. How did they do that? They actually threatened to go to court. Yeah, they are always ready to litigate. They're always ready to seek legal redress. So that's what we also have to do. It's not a competition between Kombonkas or other people, but they actually follow due process. Believe it or not. They tell them, you take our land, you have to pay the value. And then the value was $70 million. So they got $70 million. So we need to know the value of our land. For example, if you say, getting Strasserfield, that is no consolation for people of Burfoot. We got 12 square kilometers of the most expensive real estate in the Gambia taken. What is 2.3 square? What is 2.3 kilometers of that? Strasserfield. That's no consolation. The whole thing is so illegal. The whole thing is so immoral. The whole thing is so unjust. We can only correct it by following the legal redress. What's it called? UN giving us the right. The ECOWAS is giving us the right. The African Union is giving us the right. We can bypass the Gambian courts and go to ECOWAS. We have that. You can bypass it. So we have to follow this process. So what I love two things in Kola Kajanga for Nilan ko ning Kombo problem one is dual is a multi-pronged process. Multi-pronged. But one of the most important things the kacha na molya kalang number one, they understand me be caring. Nima understand ko masakuna ka funkal ala bangkon tel tamo. They need to understand ko masakuna no until bangko man ke tat until tamo na bangkot. On number one we can establish la. So fonsa na mol mako you understand and they emphasize it to anybody who comes knocking. Yeah, that's the important thing. We have to organize ourselves. We have to be willing and ready to take the government to court. Is important. Because for 60 years they took because nobody fought back. So even we can only talk. Hopefully lawyers like Mbari can come and say, okay, loyalty, what do you say is right, but maybe you can do this way, correct. Maybe it's too emotive, but actually it's no logical sense to it. That's his training. But the important thing right now is Kombo call. I think Gambian call belem. Kabri ganyan kacha start from day one. Now follow this is a Kombo problem right now, but it's actually a Gambian problem. And then we for left realize we are not being big-headed. But Kombo is the beating heart of the Gambia. Yeah. So, but importantly, me and Kombo call affect B. So more kita jarang call affect. All kita nyomin call affect. Nyomin call abol already anyway. Overnight another discussion be minkala jang anyway. Abitala Kiel, Abitala Foy, Abitala everywhere. So until we actually doing the fight for Gambian coal. So that's the way Gambian coal to understand. You Kombo coal can you catch a minkating. Tonyala mi masakunda tola banko tade. Bari left a minna pruning minkade tolia kana kentola. That's the message we're trying to send. We're not trying to be separatists. Yeah. But Mimuntati, Mumbi and Mintumbulu, Momanta Watala, everybody to understand that. We'll go anywhere with that. You're not taking that. So the Strasserfield Burfoot took it is no consolation. When you took 12 square kilometers to the most expensive real estate in some part of West Africa, where 30 by 30 can go for $2 million, $40,000. That's what it goes for. They don't even charge you in dollars. These people sell you this land in dollars. So it's no consolation. But it's not a Burfoot thing. It's not a key, it's not a Sukota thing. It's a Gambian problem. We have to fix this Gambian problem. So it's multi-pronged, like we do the political lobbying, but we also be willing and ready to go to court. Yeah, we go to court because I don't like to make this personal, but I have got personal investment in this. So I have to bring it in, unfortunately, but I wish I could be detached. Yeah. Manekuna people, they took Mustafa Njai and the government to court. We went to the High Court. Nothing came out of it, but it's not over. So Angola from Wale, what we is having this conversation, it's not like we want to go to court now. We're actually trying to educate our people. But this is publicity. Yeah? Gambian courts a lot of Gambians are becoming aware of what is happening in Gambia. They don't know. There are people within my own community, they have this strong belief that Masakunda own their land. So no, Masakunda doesn't own your land. Your land belongs to you before there was Gambia. So don't even entertain this nonsense. Yeah? Allah barakabaki. Anyway, I don't want to Mbaring Butu. Nga barakabaki. Dr. Conte, I don't know, you would like to chip in. Baraka.
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah, you are mute. Hold on. Yeah, Dr. Conte, so you're mute. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Obunya nyimbare nga di barrister Dembala. He can conclude and he can take my time and use my time.
Okay, well, you know, I'm so humbled by coming here today and also express my view. And my views are values that I believe in, and those actually relate to where I come from as a person and where I am today. So my always ending words that I always said, the point of law is to render justice. Fairness is fundamental tenet of justice. And without fairness, there can be no justice. You know, and I think it is important that people learn if they were forcefully taken away, they are properly compensated. But of course, do not allow yourself to be a pushover. We have to believe in what we believe in. Thank you very much for having me here today. I enjoyed the conversation. Next time, I'm going to try and speak in full Mandinka. That way, you know, everyone will hear me.
No problem. Until can contact back. Definitely. Imam Musod na nyanya bara wallahi baraka. They bari
That's something that we have to
fulfill completely. Gaya fulfill. Dr. Conte baraka baki. Nga fonya minnamu. Kanyim fonya every time. We are not experts. We don't tol ma fon karantal. But in damandi humillo nga tamandi huminke nga dam nga mindis fenge. So lafta ninga Gambian call be call kacha ning Kombo call fana kacha. But lafta Kombo call Gambian call mimbambo Kombo. We can't America Kombo call. They are just criminals out here. Unka kelo ka tol bele min katan tolla awoka na challa so ala jo nyama na len tol yamba diam ka fo okay you ni diam kan de bari ning matu ngeen miral hakilola ngalla moy lek hakilola then I will help you because sa je te fana se prepare ko ya fo okay mine fa ngin luata mine bije min sa fa ko so may sa fonte na mamay min tu ya moment ya ka fonte tante so what can I do to do that come on call are doing that fight for you bari nga fa nyami mol bije min na community mi ko yo start in tol nyala. So everybody cover banjun ko jole but iman si bulo katende jode no iko masakuna mbesa malakiti or masakuna okay nyina wale balo tumbal jola wonna so they know how to play the game and what they're doing is right so other people have to copy that but ma fula moyala baraka bake mbari nga baraka bake Dr. Konta baraka bake jama tena lu modol kanal jina bara bi manano sawane wol manano Ahmad Majang is the Gambia manano mfama banka manano visita mfama rafana manano barbutuwo we just exchange ideas. New platform is for everybody, from everybody dada, but the Gambia dada, yata fempola, yata kacha, anybody, unana jaya fonye. We are very happy in the hostel. Once again, Buffalo Moigala Baraka Baki, Baring Baraka, Dr. Konta Baraka, for Alamanya Jamala Tenen Kotekela, Almasuko.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Okay, doctor. Nice.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Baraka. Okay, bye.